So today I'll I'll do a follow up to my discussion or the leading conversation on the Twitter suspension. So things are beginning to uh, play out in accordance to my predictions. And I predicted earlier that after the suspension, the guys in Twitter would link up with the federal government and they would try and see how the gray areas in the relationship is addressed. Now, there are issues that needs to be talked about. One of them is that Nigeria is heading to uncharted territories. Nigeria is heading to uncharted waters. Now, what that means is that the Twitter suspension is gravitating Nigeria towards an unfamiliar territory. Now, why did I call it on an unfamiliar territory? That's exactly what technology is to Nigeria. Our strength is not technology. The the strength of Nigeria is not in artificial intelligence. The strength of Nigeria is not in nuclear weapons. The strength of Nigeria is not in robotics. So what does that tell you? It tells you that we have comparative advantage in some certain areas. So when Nigeria engages in a face-off with a big tech company like Twitter, for instance, when Nigeria engages in a quarrel or an argument with a big tech company like Twitter, Facebook, for instance, you begin to ask yourself, we are engaging in an argument where we do not have intelligence. We are engaging in an argument where we do not have superior knowledge. That's the point. So, since Nigeria does not have comparative advantage in the field of technology, what's the right thing to do? The right thing to do is to partner with nations of the world that have comparative advantage in that space. America is a very good example of a nation that is fantastic with technology. China too is a very good example of a nation that is fantastic with technology. So since Twitter is an American company, we would not be looking in the direction of America. So we're looking in the direction of China, for instance. Now, what Nigeria is trying to do with the suspension of Twitter, they've not been able to achieve it. Why? It's very simple and straightforward. If you tell somebody not to do something because you are powerful, your power or the authority you exercise is supposed to make him stop. Nigeria, the Federal Ministry of Information comes up with an announcement that Twitter has been suspended. If you suspend a staff from an organization, that staff is not supposed to still be working. That's why I said Nigeria has not been able to achieve their goals with the Twitter suspension. If as a CEO or if as a boss you get into an argument with your subordinate, if as a boss or as a superior you get into a quarrel with your subordinate and the matter is brought before a board or a panel, and the panel decides that the next line of action is to suspend that staff because he has heard or she has heard, that staff is supposed to leave the organization for a period of time. That is what you call a sanction. Now, in Nigeria today, Twitter has been suspended, but you still have lots of Nigerians, they are still using Twitter. Why? Because they've been able to bypass it. Now, in trying to regulate social media, in trying to control social media, Nigeria needs more than signing documents. Nigeria needs more than instructing the NCC to make moves. Nigeria needs more than telling the NBC, the National Broadcasting Commission, to act in a particular manner. Why? Because this is the field of technology. Let me give an example with China. When China was trying to regulate social media, they did not just come up with directives, they came up with technologies to back it up. So, in other words, if you say you are suspending people from a social media platform, it is not enough to instruct the internet service providers. It's not enough to tell Globacom. It's not enough to tell Airtel. It's not enough to tell MTN and the rest that they should restrict access to the Twitter platform, that they should block access to the Twitter platform. What about the guys using VPNs? That's it. That's the reason why in China they come up with the great wall, the great firewall of China. I've been talking about firewalls. They should create firewalls in government house. Now, the creation of firewalls in government house will regulate or restrict the bad guys from getting in. So when the bad guys try to gain access to government house, the firewalls will restrict them and they'll move backwards. That's exactly what the guys in China did. They suspended Twitter, they suspended Facebook, they suspended Instagram, they suspended most of Google products. And in trying to suspend most of Google products, they created an alternative. In China today, if you say you want to go and log on to Twitter, it won't work. It will be prompting you to use another platform or an indigenous platform called Weibo. In China today, if you say you want to go and use Google, it won't fly, it won't work. It will be prompting you to use an indigenous app called Baidu. In China today, if you go to social media platforms that you are used to, if you try to log on to them, it will be prompting you to use the Chinese version. That's why today you have Weibo in China, you have Baidu in China, you have WeChat in China, and all of that. They are creating their own alternatives. Why? Because they are playing to their strength. You see, we are trying to fight the Americans with their own technological products. So we are countering them with our own indigenous products. So it makes sense that way. So the people of China, they don't have any choice. Federal government of China wakes up one morning, they create, uh, they come up with directives, they come up with policies, they come up with rules, they come up with guidelines, and they back it up with indigenous products. So the government will wake up and say, our Twitter handle has been deactivated. Now, if you still want to reach us, migrate to a new platform. If you are a Nigerian or if you are a Chinese man, you have no choice. If you want to be getting information from your government, you have to migrate from Twitter to that platform. That's the point. You don't have a choice. If you want to continue to enjoy the services from that government, you have to cross from Facebook and you cross to the indigenous platform. That is where the government is now. That is where you can link up with the government. That is where you can enjoy the services from the government. That is where you can enjoy correspondence from the government online. So you see, they do not just come up with directives, they come up with indigenous products as alternatives. So it makes sense that way. Now, they did not just stop there, they came up with their own firewalls. It's called the Great Firewall of China. So today you are having lots of Nigerians, they are bypassing Airtel, bypassing internet service providers, and they are downloading VPNs. VPNs is simply an app that will help you do what the ISPs cannot do. That's why you still have lots of people on Twitter today. That's the point. So to them, the suspension did not actually produce the right result. Because if you say you are suspending somebody, that person is not supposed to be working. Millions of Nigerians are still using Twitter. So it creates a problem for federal government. How are you going to enforce it? If you say you want to arrest or prosecute people that are flouting your rules, how many of them do you want to arrest? There are millions and millions of Nigerians that are downloading VPNs and they are getting access to Twitter. That's the point. That's why I say the federal government of Nigeria needs to be guided. In trying to execute some of their plans or in trying to execute some of their moves, they need to sit down and think about it. Because what the Chinese people did with the Great Fire was is to stop people from gaining access to blocked sites. The firewalls will enforce it because it's an advanced filter technology. So you try to use VPN, the VPN will not be able to go because something is blocking the VPN from working. What's that? It is the Great Firewall of China. So that's the point. In trying to suspend Twitter, the federal government realized that their their suspension is not really working. It's working to a large extent, but it's not working in totality because you still have some people, millions of Nigerians, they are still gaining access to Twitter. So that's the point. Now, there's another point that needs to be talked about. Globally, VPN is recognized for connecting one company with the other, for connecting one person to the other, and all of that. Now, if government comes up with an order to ban some people from using VPN, how do you enforce it? It becomes very, very hard. Now, there are some religious bodies in Nigeria, they have presence internationally. There are some churches in Nigeria, they do not just have uh, worship centers in Nigeria, but they have worship centers abroad. Some have worship centers in about 150 countries. So if those churches have gotten used to using a particular social media platform, it will become hard for them to stop because everybody have gotten to know them. So imagine millions of people, they are linking up to a church on Twitter. So if the federal government comes up with a new policy or with a new guideline that those guys should stop using Twitter, it will become hard because they will have problems connecting with lots of people. So you see, global organizations, they use VPN daily. And if you try to make it illegal for them to use it, it will become very challenging for them. It will cause serious problems for them because they won't be able to link up with their foreign counterparts. They won't be able to achieve foreign correspondence. So that's why it becomes very, very hard for you to enforce those kind of laws. Now, some international companies, for instance, they have business presence in Nigeria, and some Nigerian companies, they have international presence.